of radical Islam during the Lebanese Civil War. Gabrielle's departure from the anti-Israel mindset of her Arab culture followed her in 1982 to a visit to Israel in search of medical assistance for her seriously wounded mother. Faced with the compassion, the respect, and the kindness of the Israelis, Gabrielle denounced her government's propaganda about the Jews and the Israeli people. Gabrielle returned to Israel 2 years later and began her career as a journalist. She quickly rose to the position of news anchor for World News. She married an American war correspondent in Jerusalem and relocated to America, where she became a U.S. citizen. As a native Arab, Brigette's expertise on Middle Eastern politics and the dangers of radical Islam is beyond compare. She has appeared on countless national television and radio programs exposing the threat of radical Islam to America, the threat to our families, the threat to our hopes and dreams for tomorrow, and the threat, a very real threat, to America. She tells her story in her latest book, Because They Hate. I'll be back in just a moment, but first, this word from our announcer. I saw you on Fox News with Neil Cavuto and was greatly impressed by your grasp of the geopolitical conditions of the Middle East, the agenda of the radical Islam, and the dangers radical Islam brings to America, to Israel, and to Western civilization. I'd like for you to share with our audience your horrific experiences as a child during one of the first Islamic attacks against Christian Arabs in Lebanon.
My 911 wake-up call happened when I was 10 years old. I'm an only child to a Christian retired businessman. We lived in a Christian town in South Lebanon called Marjayoun. We had already heard about war breaking out in different parts of Lebanon where Christians were being killed and massacred. But I woke up, my parents had tucked me in bed one night, and they were sitting eating their dinner in the family room. And all of a sudden we heard this big explosion explode around the house. The Muslims targeted our area because we were Christians living in a Christian town. They targeted our town trying to take it over to create a base from which to fight Israel. The Muslims and the Palestinians had come together as two Muslim forces fighting the Christians. They bombed my home, bringing it down and burying me under the rubble. I was wounded, I was 10 years old, and I ended up living in a hospital for 2.5 months. And when I was in the hospital, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are infidels. Because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels, and they want to kill us. So I knew ever since I was 10 years old that I'm wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith.
So at the age of 10, this attack began to sculpture your concept of your relationship as a Christian in a Muslim society, and so this is how this attack influenced your political outlook.
Exactly. And a lot of people, when they think about Lebanon, they don't realize that Lebanon was the only Christian country in the Middle East with the largest Christian concentration. It was the Christians in Lebanon who gave the world Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. When we got our independence from France in the early 40s, the majority of the people were Christians. The Muslims were the minority. But over the years, those numbers began to change. We, the Christians, shrunk, and we became the minority. And the Muslims, because of their birth rate, because of the way they marry, and they are allowed to marry up to 4 wives at a time, they grow at a much faster pace. The most famous Muslim in the world today is Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is 1 out of 53 children. He himself has 27 children. See, these are the numbers that the mainstream media, they do not discuss these numbers with the American public. So if you look at Osama bin Laden and his father, they have produced 80 children. How many people, John, do you know in America, or Christians, or Jews anywhere around the world, who have produced so many children? We don't. And that's what tipped the scale in Lebanon.
John Hagee Ministries Radio is reaching all over America with the Word of God, and we want to keep it that way. If you agree that the radio is a great way to spread the Word of God, call now and let us know at 1-800-807-9032. Tell the operator at 1-800-807-9032 you want to keep hearing Pastor Hagee on the radio. We want to stay on the air, but we must know you are listening, and we need you to call now. That number again is 1-800-807-9032.
Once the Muslims became the majority, They started asking for more rights in the government, for more representation. And here we had given them the best schools. The Muslim Lebanese were the most educated Muslims in the Middle East. Because of the Christian influence in Lebanon, we had built the best economy. The Christians in Lebanon are the descendants of the Phoenicians. We were good in commerce. We inherited those commercial skills from our ancestors. So we were able to build the best economy in the Middle East without any oil, based on our education and our business wit. We recruited big major companies from all around the world. So we had people come from all around the Arabic world, the Muslims, to study in our universities, which were the best universities in the Middle East, to work in our economy because we had the best jobs that we could offer them, that their countries didn't have and did not offer. We had open borders. We welcomed everybody in because of our Judeo-Christian values and culture. We wanted to share with our surrounding countries, our Arabic neighbors, what we were able to create, the wealth we created, the good life we created, the good education we created. But we didn't realize that you can offer somebody everything you have, but you can never bring somebody who is lower than you up. The forces of the universe will always have the lower bring the higher person down. And this is exactly what happened. We had people who had no desire to be immersed into our society, to become like us, to better themselves, and to take that betterment into their cultures. Instead, they wanted to bring down our culture. And that was the beginning of the civil war in Lebanon, which broke the population in half. The majority Muslims, with the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan, when King Hussein kicked them out in Black September, the majority were Muslims. They put their heads together with the Muslims in Lebanon and declared war on the Christians.
Let's talk about this population explosion potential as you talk about Osama bin Laden being one of 53 children and he himself having 27, which is 80 children between he and his father. If his other brothers and sisters were that prolific, they could have produced over 1,400 children in that one family in a matter of 30 years. That's how the Muslims, with their multiple marriages, and it's important to understand that all a Muslim man has to do to divorce his wife is just say 3 times, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and she's out the door.
Exactly.
And he can marry a 5th wife. He still has 4. He may have 1 running the streets or 5 running the streets, but he only has 4 under his roof.
That's right.
And they are all his. They are more property than they are people.
Exactly.
They have very little rights, but that's how that they can move into a state or to a nation and in a very short period of time, in a democracy, outvote you.
Exactly.
They can change the laws to be in their favor. And that's why we have in this country right now an immigration problem that can become a very real problem because the American birth rate, because of abortion, is almost level. But we have people among us who are producing great numbers of people that in a very short period of time will be going to a voting booth and not voting our children.
Exactly. And you mentioned the problem with our borders and our immigration system. A lot of the terrorists are getting into our country through our borders. Now we've been hearing a lot about Hezbollah in Lebanon, especially in this last war between Israel and Lebanon. What people do not realize that the FBI in America have arrested 300 Hezbollah operatives on American soil in recent years. One of them was a general smuggled through the Mexican border. Hezbollah is working with the MS-13 gang. They are paying between $3,000 to $5,000 per head per Hezbollah member to be smuggled into our country. Al-Qaeda is working through the MS-13 gang also. Al-Qaeda is paying between $25,000 to $50,000 per Al-Qaeda member to be smuggled into our country. We have a major problem with our immigration system, with our border control. Not only we are inviting our enemy in, but this enemy is coming into the United States, marrying American citizens who are Muslims, who are already here, who are sympathizers with Hezbollah,
yes,
and producing more children. So terrorists are breeding terrorists in our country holding American passports. This is a problem that no one is talking about, and this is going to be a major problem 10, 15 years from now.
It is indeed. Tell us about the Islamic perspective. What is the point of view of the radical Islamics? There are those who are saying that we must engage our terrorist enemies, that we must address their grievances. what is their grievance against America, and what is their grievance against Israel?
Their grievance is our democratic process. Their grievance is our existence. Their grievance is our freedoms and all the freedoms that we cherish. Their grievance is how a man respects his wife, is how a father loves and honors his daughter. Their freedom, their grievance is our education, the way we love life, the way we pursue life, the way we pursue wealth, the way we relate to each other as one another, the way we look at each other as equal under the law and in the eyes of God. Because in the eyes of radical Islamists and in the eyes of Muslims, according to their Quran, there is no equal to Islam. Islam is above Christianity, is above Judaism. While we as Christian and Jews learn about tolerance and forgiveness and love. Love your enemy like yourself. This is what we are taught from the time we are children. If somebody slaps you on your right cheek, you turn the left to them. Treat your neighbors the way you want to be treated. Honor your father and mother. Honor your friends. Honor your elderly. You look at Islam, and it's a completely different education. While we in our multiculturalism, who want to respect everybody and tolerate everybody, and it's a wonderful quality to have. Those are wonderful characters of the West. But there's a fine line between being naive and being stupid, between ignorant and committing suicide. And at this point in our life, what made America great are those same freedoms that we cherish, yet our enemy despises. And this is why they want to destroy us. And when I look around me, and after I woke up on September 11th, and I watched television, and Americans were asking questions, why do they hate us? What did we do to them? America didn't have to do anything. Israel didn't have to do anything. They simply exist. Look what happened to the Christians in the Middle East, to the minority Christians who were supposedly, quote-unquote, Arabs.
Yes.
Look what happened to us. They bombed my home. I was an Arab. I was holding a Lebanese passport. I was holding a Lebanese identity. My mother tongue was Arabic. I consider Israel my enemy. So why did the Muslims attack the Arab Christian Lebanese, the Arab Christian Egyptians, the Arab Christian Syrians, the Arab Christian Assyrians? It's simply because we are infidels according to the Quran. And once the West comes to grip with that realization, we can begin to save our civilization.
There's nothing that we can do to please them. That's one of the reasons that the Islamic Prayer Tower has the highest point in the city, is because all people must submit to that religion to get along with that religion. Those who were captured by Fox, the news reporters, were put face down in the dirt and with a gun in their head, said that they should convert to Islam as a condition of their release. What kind of religion on the face of the earth puts a gun to a man's head and says, I'm going to murder you if you don't receive my faith? This will kind of give the American people a grasp of what we're up against. We'll be back in just a moment.
We'll be right back after these messages. Brigitte Gabriel is a Lebanese Christian whose family suffered horrible atrocities at the hand of Islamic terrorists. Her story is a wake-up call for America. As a companion resource, we also want you to have the documentary Obsession, Radical Islam's War Against the West. Obsession reveals the passionate hatred that radical Islam has for Western civilization. A CD copy of Pastor's interview with Brigitte Gabriel and a DVD copy of Obsession is just $28. A video copy of Pastor's interview with Brigitte Gabriel and a DVD copy of Obsession is just $40. Ask for offer number KT133. Please include $5 shipping and handling in the U.S. and $7 in Canada. Call now, 1-800-807-9032. That's 1-800-807-9032. Thank you for listening. We have a very special free gift just for you. Call now, 1-800-807-9032 and ask for offer U77. That's 1-800-807-9032.
If you have any questions about God or the Bible, call now. Pastor John Hagee is listening to you. The number is 1-800-807-9032. Then push the number 1 to record your question. Pastor John Hagee will answer you in the upcoming radio program. Again, if you have any questions for Pastor John Hagee about God or the Bible, call now, and he will hear it at 1-800-807-9032. Then push the number 1.
Because They Hate is an intensely personal, riveting, and compelling book by Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte Gabriel is a Lebanese Christian whose family suffered horrible atrocities at the hand of Islamic terrorists. The story of Miss Gabriel's childhood in war-torn Lebanon encapsulates the threat that faces the entire free world today. This book gives dire warning to the Western world if it does not take responsible action to protect its people from Islamic radicalism. Because They Hate, a survivor of Islamic terror warns America. Because They Hate, in hardback for just $22. Order it today by calling 1-800-807-9032 and ask for offer B134. Please include $5 shipping and handling in the U.S. and $7 in Canada. Call now, 1-800-807-9032. That's 1-800-807-9032. You turn on the TV or log on the internet and you see it. You turn on the radio and you hear it. People everywhere you go are talking about it. The end of the world. The problems in Iraq, North Korea, Iran, and Israel all coming at us at once. What does it mean and how will it end? Find out the prophetic details as Pastor John Hagee explains them in his latest book, Jerusalem Countdown. Available at bookstores everywhere, or call for your copy right now at 1-800-807-9032. It's just $14 plus shipping and handling. That's 1-800-807-9032.
You are listening to Cornerstone with America's Pastor John Hagee.
My special guest today is Brigitte Gabriel. She is the author of Because They Hate. She is one of the foremost authorities on the Islamic abuse to Christians because she is a victim of Islamic terrorism. Brigitte, Americans believe that Islamic sleeper cells are covering the nation and are now in place waiting for a phone call to launch an attack against the nation. You know the organizational structure and the tactics of the terrorist groups. Could you explain to our audience the radical tactics that these cells plan to use against America?
This is a major problem for America, the sleeper cells in the United States. And people, when sometimes they hear about terrorist organization, they hear about Hezbollah or Hamas, and they think, oh, that's an 8,000 miles away problem. That's not going to affect us. It's so far away. I've got news for those who believe those are far away. Hezbollah has 11 cells that we know of and monitor in the United States on American soil. That's Hezbollah. Hezbollah just came in now to the attention to the American public because when the FBI arrested 300 Hezbollah operatives on American soil in the last few years, Americans were not paying attention. It was only when we started negotiating with Iran about their nuclear activities that the New York Times, about 2 months ago, published on their front cover fearing a Hezbollah cell in New York City ready to unleash suicide bombing. This is how we started looking at Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not the only organization that has cells on American soil. You look at Hamas, for example, and that's another organization that people think, oh, that's an Israeli problem. Those Hamas and those Israelis have been fighting forever. Hamas, of all the terrorist organizations on American soil who have set up shop on American soil, and the top three are Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas, Hamas has the largest infrastructure of all terrorist organizations on American soil. Hamas has cells in over 40 states in the United States. 40! And those are the cells we know of and monitor. We know they are all over. Those cells are harbored by the local Muslim communities. Those cells do not operate independently or in secret. Those cells operate within, are protected by, supported by the local Islamic communities. Nothing happens in a vacuum in those communities. I come from the Middle East. I come from the Arabic culture. There is no such thing as, oh, well, we didn't know about them. Everybody knows everybody's business in any local community, Arabic community in America. All you have to do is walk into the local grocery store and ask them, do you know so-and-so? And they not only can tell you where so-and-so lives, but they can tell you everything about so-and-so, his background, he socializes with, what does he do, where did he come from, everything. This is a problem we have here. Hamas, in their article 22 of the Hamas Charter, which was written in 1988 by Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, the old Sheikh, if you recall, that Israel assassinated, and people went up in arms because supposedly he's a man of God, and this is an 80-year-old guy in a wheelchair. This man was one of the top terrorists in the world. He wrote the Hamas Charter. In Article 22 of the Hamas Charter, where they talk about terrorist organizations to be destroyed and espionage Zionist organizations to be destroyed, they mention the Lions Clubs, the Rotary Clubs, the Freemasons, the B'nai B'rith, and the likes. All of them are destructive espionage organizations to be destroyed. How many of them, how many of you who are are members of the Lions Clubs or the Freemasons who wake up in the morning to go in their communities, to their local meetings, to do good in their community. No, they are mentioned in the Hamas charter. Hamas, the terrorist organization that has the largest infrastructure on American soil, that's plotting their destruction on American soil as they are coming up with good ideas on how they can help the world.
One of the great weaknesses in the American people in this war that we have against Islamofascists is that in World War I, in World War II, in the Korean War, in the Vietnamese War, there was an ability to say their army is there and they have 150,000 men, our army is here. They were in a geographical area that could be greatly defined. But the enemy that we're fighting now is among us. They live next door. They are very highly organized and with a very minimum cost of money can cause the United States enormous mega billions of dollars of damage. The 9/11 event cost less than $1 million, yet it has cost hundreds of billions of dollars to the American people to recapture our economy, all the security systems that have been in place. It has fundamentally changed our way of living in life. 19 men with less than $1 million brought to America's knees the power of our economy, the Pentagon. God bless those men that crashed the plane in the fields of Philadelphia that was destined for the White House, because we as a people have to recognize, because you cannot see the enemy, that the enemy is not there. They are here. They're not coming. They are here.
They are here. They are working amongst us. As any American living in the United States, any American, you have shaken the hand of a terrorist, you have exchanged money with a terrorist, you have passed a terrorist in our soil. They are here. When you look at these 19 men, and we only know that they are terrorists only after they did terrorist act. It's like when you watch or listen to the people that talk about Muslim men in this country, like the student in North Carolina, who drove his SUV into a field where students were standing just to kill innocent civilians. When you hear people talk about him, he was the exemplary student. He was wonderful. He was so nice. He kept to himself. He was such a good student. And all of a sudden people were shocked. Oh, how could he do this? He was such a great guy. And I remember tuning the TV the day after September 11th and the few days following September 11th, and listening to the landlord. I caught an interview with one of the landlord of Muhammad Atta and his co-operatives who did the September 11th attack, and they were interviewing the landlord, and the landlord was saying they were wonderful guys. They kept to themselves, never created any problems, always paid their rent on time. You would think he's talking about some two Mormon guys from Utah. Never bothered anybody, such nice guys, apple pie. Why do we have to wait until they commit a terrorist act? Why can't we be vigilant? If you look at the 19 hijackers who committed 9/11, they did their crime. They used terrorism against America while living on American soil. They had American papers. They had American driver's license. They paid in American dollars, went to American flight school to learn their flying lessons, and used American airlines to kill Americans. So when you look at the plot and how it was carried out, it's astonishing. It wasn't another country attacking us. They used our system, our money, our education, our people, and everything in their power inside America to attack America and to kill Americans.
Pastor John Hagee invites you to join us in our support of Rabbi Grossman and the Migdal Or Orphanage in Israel. Migdal Or cares for hundreds of orphaned and abandoned children from all over the world. Migdal Or raises these children in a wonderful atmosphere of unconditional love and provides them with a high-quality education. Go to jhm.org now for more information. That's jhm.org and click on the Migdal Or banner.
You are listening to Cornerstone with America's Pastor John Hagee.
Here's something that the American people are wondering about that they haven't been able to come to grips with. You know, they say, you know, the Islamics, there are 1.3 billion people who are in this faith, but there is the generalization thrown out that not all of them are terrorists, and that's true. But the point is this, that when an act of terror is committed, like the recent capture of Fox News reporters and cameramen, when atrocities like that are committed, when people are openly terrorized, Where is the voice of the moderate Arab rejecting and rebuking those people? Why don't they speak out? If there is a moderate Arab Islamic voice, why don't they speak out and condemn these terrorists so that we can truly say there is a difference? Because we are getting to the only option of believing that there are these 200-300 million who are terrorists and are ready to commit murder to any Christian and Jew, but the rest of them are not going to speak out against them because they're either fearful or they are simply acquiescing to their position. Which is it?
You know, I'm tired of the excuses of, well, they are afraid to speak. They are intimidated from speaking. They do not want to speak. When people do not agree with something, they will find a way to voice their opinion. We have seen demonstration in this country by Muslims, for example, recently, about American support to Israel with this latest Lebanese Hezbollah-Israel war. Look at the demonstration in Dearborn, Michigan. Where were those demonstrations after 9/11? Where are the Muslims in the United States? Where is the voice of the mullahs speaking from the pulpits, telling all their mosque members, we are going to have a demonstration in Washington, D.C. to show our fellow Americans that we are Americans first, that we do not agree with the beheading, that we do not agree with killing of innocent people, that we do not agree on putting a gun to somebody's head and forcing them to convert to Islam, like the recent example with the Fox reporters, and this is what they did to them. I can understand why Muslims in the Middle East, maybe in Libya, maybe in Syria, maybe in Lebanon, are afraid to demonstrate, but there is no excuse for Muslims in the United States not to get themselves on buses and get into Washington, D.C., and at least send a message, if not only to the Americans in America, so we can say, like you said, okay, we understand there are the moderates, those are the extremists who are committing these acts. But how come the moderates are not speaking up? They have the rights to speak up in America. No one will kill them. We have freedom of religion. We have freedom of speech. They can burn the flag on any street, USA. They can demonstrate and no one will touch them. But you cannot hear their voices. Here's one interesting thing. Free Muslim Coalition Against Terrorism, which is an organization founded in Washington, D.C., and based in Washington, D.C., founded by Kamal Nawash, who's the president. Kamal is a friend of mine and an acquaintance. Kamal came to me and he said, we are organizing this rally from the Free Muslim Coalition Against Terrorism. We want to condemn terrorism. And he wanted the support of my organization, AmericanCongressForTruth.org. And I said, Kamal, I will help you, but I will not turn out our people, the Christian and Jews, to demonstrate, but I will literally carry the posters, your posters for your rally, from mosque to mosque and put them up to encourage the Muslims to show up. When Kamal Nawash had his rally and he went and asked the help of all Christian and Jewish organizations and of Muslim organizations, the Muslims organizations did not show up to participate, not only condemned the rally, but went on the attack against Kamal Nawash and said that he does not represent nor speak of on behalf of the Muslim community. Barely 50 people showed up to his demonstration in Washington, D.C. What does that tell the American public about where the Muslims in America stand on terrorism?
We are discovering, much like the French, that they're moving here to maintain their position and not to become Americans. Many Americans have not taken the time to read the Quran, but the Quran reads in Surah 5:51, believers, take not Jews and Christians to be your friends. They are but friends and protectors of each other. Brigitte, why is it that the Islamics hate Christians? I want you to tell this audience why that is.
Because this is what the Quran tells them to do. This is the non-politically correct statement that not many people in this country are willing to take the risk to state, because this means you're going to receive death threats like I do. This is the time in this country where we need to develop the spine to stand up and defend America and our Western civilization, because it is worth defending. The Quran teaches Muslims not to have any tolerance to anything non-Muslims. They teach Muslims that the infidels are bad. They teach Muslims to kill the infidel, behead them, smite their necks and cut off their fingers and their toes. This is the Quran. This is not some other book. This is not somebody else saying that or misquoting the Quran. These are surahs in the Quran. And when you hear people quoting that the Quran is, oh, you know, there are verses that are very peaceful. You know, the Quran is a peaceful religion. Absolute nonsense. In the Quran, in the beginning, when Muhammad was trying to appeal to the Jews and the Christians and trying to recruit them, he was saying all sorts of nice things so he can get them to be on his side. When they refused to listen to him, that's when he went on killing the Jews. He started in Mecca. When nobody would listen to him in Mecca, he went to Medina, trying to rally Muslims around him in Medina. When he became strong in Medina, he killed the Jews, came back to Mecca, and took over his city.
Yes.
So this is how he started. Once he conquered the Jews and the Christians who did not listen to him, that's when he declared all these surahs, all these ayahs in the Quran against the Jews and the Christians. And the law of the Islamic law states that in any new verse in the Quran, if it contradicts the first verse, that new verse is the verse they should follow. It completely abolishes the old verse. And this is something Americans need to understand. And that's the problem with Islam. It is Islam, it is the teachings of the Quran. The Muslims have not yet gone through a change, a revival in their religion like Jews and Christians have gone through. We in the Bibles do have verses, especially in the Old Testament, that are violent verses. Yet you do not see any Jews today strapping bombs on their bodies and going to Egypt or any mosques and bombing themselves.
Yes.
You do not see Christians practicing these teachings. Yet you see Islam has not evolved. They're doing today what Muhammad said to do in the 7th century.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Thank you for listening to this station and this program. We will give you a free gift just for being a listener. Call now at 1-800-807-9032 and push the number 2 to reach a live operator. That number again is 1-800-807-9032. Call now and get your free gift. Due to the high number of calls, we have to limit the free gift to 1 per household. This is John Hagee Ministries Radio.
Because They Hate is an intensely personal, riveting, and compelling book by Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte Gabriel is a Lebanese Christian whose family suffered horrible atrocities at the hand of Islamic terrorists. The story of Miss Gabriel's childhood in war-torn Lebanon encapsulates the threat that faces the entire free world today. This book gives dire warning to the Western world if it does not take responsible action to protect its people from Islamic radicalism. Because They Hate, a survivor of Islamic terror warns America. Because They Hate, in hardback for just $22. Order it today by calling 1-800-807-9032 and ask for offer B134. Please include $5 shipping and handling in the U.S. and $7 in Canada. Call now, 1-800-807-9032. That's 1-800-807-9032. You turn on the TV or log on the internet and you see it. You turn on the radio and you hear it. People everywhere you go are talking about it. The end of the world. The problems in Iraq, North Korea, Iran, and Israel all coming at us at once. What does it mean and how will it end? Find out the prophetic details as Pastor John Hagee explains them in his latest book, Jerusalem Countdown. Available at bookstores everywhere or call for your copy right now at 1-800-807-9032. It's just $14 plus shipping and handling. That's 1-800-807-9032.
If you have any questions about God or the Bible, call now. Pastor John Hagee is listening to you. The number is 1-800-807-9032. Then push the number 1 to record your question. Pastor John Hagee will answer you in the upcoming radio program. Again, if you have any questions for Pastor John Hagee about God or the Bible, call now and he will hear it at 1-800-807-9032. Then push the number 1.
Brigitte Gabriel is a Lebanese Christian whose family suffered horrible atrocities at the hand of Islamic terrorists. Her story is a wake-up call for America. As a companion resource, we also want you to have the documentary Obsession, Radical Islam's War Against the West. Obsession reveals the passionate hatred that radical Islam has for Western civilization. A CD copy of Pastor's interview with Brigitte Gabriel and a DVD copy of Obsession is just $28. A video copy of Pastor's interview with Brigitte Gabriel and a DVD copy of Obsession is just $40. Ask for offer number KT133. Please include $5 shipping and handling in the U.S. and $7 in Canada. Call now, 1-800-807-9032. That's 1-800-807-9032.
You are listening to Cornerstone with America's Pastor John Hagee.
When you lived in Lebanon and the Islamic radicals invaded Lebanon, Some Christians fought for the Islamics, feeling that they were the underdogs. And as soon as the Islamics got the upper hand, in your book, Because They Hate, you stated that those Islamics turned on those Christians who had fought to defend them. Did you personally see that?
I heard many stories. I did not personally see it, but many people who fled into our areas. See, there were a lot of Christians in Lebanon who were the intellectuals who were with the Communist Party. The Communist Party was big back then. And they thought, we're going to fight for the underdog. We're going to stand up for Palestinian rights. We're going to stand up for Islamic rights, thinking that, you know, we believe that the Muslims should have more rights in the government. We're going to stand up and defend the Palestinians and their right to fight Israel from Lebanon using Lebanese territories. When the Muslims had the upper hand and started massacring the Christians, when they went in to massacre those Christians who were supposedly the liberal Christians, and the liberal Christians would say, oh, don't kill us. We're the ones who fought for you to get to this position. We're the ones who worked very hard for you to become so strong. They looked at them and they said, you are nothing more than a filthy infidel. You are Christians and you will be killed. And those who escaped, who were telling us these stories, they said horrifying stories. And this is what happened to us in Lebanon. And this is the lesson that I'm afraid many people in the West are going to have to learn the hard way. We need to look at history and learn from history.
Yes.
When we look at beheadings on television right now, and I remember the first time we saw we didn't watch the beheading of Daniel Berg or any of the beheadings, which I think was the biggest disservice the American media did to the American public. Because I believe Americans have the right to know what type of barbaric enemy they are fighting.
Yes.
We are fighting an enemy that does not have a soul. When they beheaded Daniel Pearl was on the news. The story was on the news for 8 days. Every night you heard about it. When they beheaded Nick Berg, the story was on the news for 3 days. There has been 35 beheadings in Iraq. Can you remember any other name?
No.
No. It was barely mentioned in the evening news and gone. In Lebanon, when the Muslims surrounded the Christians and started massacring the Christians, at the beginning of the war,
Why? Because America has its embassy in the
became prisoners into our towns and cities. We stopped traveling. Because the Muslims and the Palestinians would set up checkpoints, and they would get people out of their cars and ask them for their IDs. You see, in the Middle East, we are identified in our ID what religion we belong to. Not only what religion, but what sect of that religion. If you are a Jew, if you are a Christian, if you are a Muslim.
It's a national identity card.
It's our national identity card. So when the Muslims and the Palestinians would stop people and ask them to get out of their cars and look at their ID cards, when they would find out they were Christians, they would kill the whole family in cold blood.
Right there.
Right there, kill them. Christians became petrified to travel. We stopped going to Beirut. We used to go to Beirut and spend Christmas with the rest of my family. And we stopped going. And I would ask my parents, how come we're not going to Beirut this year for Christmas? And my father would give me such an excuse, well, we decided to stay home this year. Well, you have to understand, my parents and I'm an only child. My parents were an elderly couple, and it wasn't fun to stay home. But I didn't realize what was happening until later. When the Muslims started massacring the Christians, once they declared holy war, they would walk into Christian cities and Christian towns. They would walk into a bomb shelter. They would find a mother and a father and a baby hiding in a bomb shelter. They would take the baby, tie one leg of the baby to the mother and another leg to the father, and pull the parents apart, splitting the child in half. They would walk into the churches and they would urinate and defecate on the altar, using the Bible as toilet paper. The last lady that worked for me was completely mentally disturbed. I hired her so I can take care of her and her family. They made her cut her own son's throat on her lap. They tied her to a chair, tied her son, 16-year-old, on her lap, put a knife to her hand, and made her cut his own head. She was completely mentally disturbed because they raped her 2 daughters in front of her after they killed her son. We, the Christians, didn't have the PR, deep pocket petrodollar PR propaganda machine that Yasser Arafat and the Palestinians had. The little Christian towns and the little Christian villages didn't know how to get the story out. Not to mention we had so much dignity, we did not want to talk about things like this. Just like on 9/11 when we lost all these people. You didn't see people in New York beating their chest and pulling their hair on the streets in New York and rolling in the dirt like we watch Arabs doing in Palestinian towns and any street in an Arabic country. we could not imagine that these people really are doing this to us. But this is what happened to us. And this, hopefully, will never happen in America. But sadly, unless we wake up, what happened in Lebanon will happen in America.
Let's talk about just for just a moment, the war that Israel has just gone through. We saw on Fox News a tactic in the recent war with Israel and Hezbollah being armed from Iran through Syria down into southern Lebanon, and will probably be rearmed in this fiasco of a ceasefire. But Hezbollah would set up rocket launchers in a Christian village, fire rockets into Israel, and then quickly withdraw, knowing that Israel would return fire, and that return fire would hit civilians, and Israel would be attacked on the world media for civilian deaths. Hence, Israel would lose the public relations war. Did you see this happen in Lebanon in the Lebanese Civil War?
I was personally used as a human shield at the age of 10 in my bomb shelter. The Palestinians surrounded us trying to shoot Israel from between our homes. They would park their Katyusha rocket launcher in front of our bomb shelter in the beginning of the war. We were 4 families hiding in the bomb shelter. I was the oldest of 9 children. I was 10 years old. And they would shell at Israel, fully knowing that Israel was going to shell back at us. And my mother went out one day begging the leader of that team, telling him, there are children in this bomb shelter, please stop shooting. And he wouldn't listen to her. When she told him, she threatened she wanted to go talk to his leader even. He shot his rifle between her feet and told her that if she doesn't shut up, he's going to shoot her. This is how they operate. And they did this fully knowing that if Israel shells back, we will die. It will be a win-win situation for them. It will make great evening news for the world to watch, and Israel would look bad, and they would look like the victim. And this is the same tactic they have been using over and over and over.
And been very, very successful. Before George Bush sent the message to radical Islam, we were a week asleep and careless. There was the Iranian hostage matter with the Jimmy Carter administration, Hezbollah's attack on the Marines in 1983, in which 241 were killed. The Khobar Towers in 1996. The USS Cole was bombed by terrorists in the year 2000. Bill Clinton launched some guided missiles into a deserted terrorist camp, killing some sand dunes and terrifying some old camels, trying to get his sexual exploits with Monica Lewinsky off the front pages of America. Bridget, what do you think will be the next move Islamic terrorists make in America?
Islamic terrorists in America right now are watching our feet, and they're taking notice how we are walking. We are not being confrontational with radical Islam. We're beating around the bush instead of coming straight ahead and identifying the problem. They have cells in this country who feel so empowered and so strengthened by our ignorance and by our apathy. Remember, in the United States, the World Trade Center was attacked the first time in 1993. The only difference between 1993 and 2001 is the buildings didn't come down. Mm-hmm. We treated it like a joke. We treated 1993 bombing like just a police thing. The terrorists were so confident of our apathy and ignorance that they attacked the exact same location twice within 8 years difference. They know Americans are not paying attention. So right now, as you and I are speaking, we have cells in this country waiting to receive orders to unleash suicide bombings against us, to unleash terrorist attacks against us. And this is why it is of the utmost importance for us to be able to eavesdrop on mosques, to be able to monitor people's phone calls. There is no reason why an average American citizen would have a conversation with Al-Qaeda, for example.
That's right.
Why would you and I be having conversations with Al-Qaeda?
No.
I don't mind anybody monitoring my telephone calls. They'll get few laughs. That will be about it. But I have nothing to hide. I have no reason to call terrorist organization outside of my country. And the American public, who is so paranoid about privacy and what the government is looking into, they don't realize that those calls are monitored simply because the call was initiated from outside of America into America by a terrorist organization, and there are buzzwords that are programmed into the computer that when those buzzwords are spoken, the conversation is monitored.
I personally feel that some politicians are fighting this issue of finding out what people are saying on the telephone, because some of the things that they're saying on the telephone are illegal and outside the law. that is a personal feeling. I can't prove that. Many Americans believe, Brigitte, that the war of terror with Israel and the war of terror against America are unrelated. I believe that's absolutely untrue. I'd like your point of view.
America and Israel are hooked at the hips when it comes to the war on terror. We both are fighting the same enemy. The same enemy that wants Israel destroyed is the same enemy that wants us destroyed. Israel is our eyes and ears in the Middle East. Israel is America's permanent stationary aircraft carrier in the Middle East. Israel is our backbone in the Middle East and the only ally we can count on. While we were not paying attention to what was happening, Israel was paying attention to the radical Islamists in the Middle East. We didn't listen to Israel. When we were not paying attention when Saddam Hussein had his nuclear reactor in 1981, Israel was paying attention.
Islam society.
They have no rights, even in a regular Islamic society. Let's not talk about radical. Let's take Jordan, for example. People in America hear about Jordan. They think of King Abdullah and Queen Rania, which you would think, when you look at her, you would think she just stepped off the cover of Vogue magazine. Yet you look at the honor killing in Jordan, for example, where a father...
Now tell people what that is, because many people don't know what an honor killing is.
Honor killing is when a father, a brother, or any male member in the family can kill his female member of the family for supposedly soiled the honor of the family. And that is by either being seen with a man in an inappropriate way, by either not marrying the person that her father wanted her to marry, or simply even marrying the love of her life, just because his family did not approve of them. Sometimes husbands can come up with lies against their wives just to divorce them, or who want to hurt them, and they can come up with a lie that she cheated on me. A woman doesn't need a witness. She needs like 4 witnesses to compare with a male to back her story. If she is raped, a woman is killed. Raped! A 13-year-old child is slaughtered by her father or her brother simply because she's been raped by a family member. Her family honor is soiled because she's supposed to be a virgin. It's horrible. And then they kill this female member out in public, and there is no punishment. The greatest punishment is if a man goes to jail maybe for 4 months. It's basically a slap on the hand. He's looked at as a hero, and the woman is completely forgotten. So we are seeing the rate of suicide in the Arabic world now that there are human rights looking into it. The rate of suicide in the Arabic world is huge for women. And they can't even keep tab on how many honor killings really happen, because usually it's swept under the carpet. Nobody wants to talk about it. Usually it's done in public, and the family is proud that they did something like that. It is a crime. When I think about the NOW organization or women's rights organization in America, who are not taking on these issues, they are fighting George Bush instead of defending women's rights in the Middle East, where women are losing their lives for nothing, literally massacred and butchered in a barbaric death, and nobody's looking at them. Nobody's saying anything about it.
You're touching on something that maybe give an answer to something I've often thought about. Why? I understand why a man would put a belt on himself, because he's promised to go to heaven, and there are 70 virgins waiting for him to have eternal sexual bliss, whatever that means. But a woman, I've often wondered, why would a woman strap a belt around herself to kill herself? If she has been a woman who's been accused by her husband, she can be completely innocent, but if she straps a bomb on herself, goes into a Jewish place of worship or to a restaurant, blows herself to smithereens, she then dies with honor. That's the only way she can recapture her honor.
The only way a Muslim woman can have any respect and honor in the Middle East is literally by giving her life up by death. The female suicide bombers, like you mentioned, we are seeing more female suicide bombers. They are dying because they're going to die anyway. They're going to be killed anyway. So their family members, and now you have the radical Islamists are approaching them, and actually there are rings in the Palestinian territories under the leadership of Yasser Arafat when he was alive, where they used to rape this young lady. They would pick up on young women who were insecure or didn't come from big families, rape them, and then recruit them, tell them you're going to be killed, so you might as well join and become a suicide bomber. One of the last suicide bombers that we saw, a mother with 2 children. Her husband drove her to blow herself up, and it was her boyfriend, whom she supposedly committed adultery with, who made her suicide belt. And this mother went, 22 years old, blew herself up at a crossing in Israel, orphaned her 2 children, became a suicide bomber, simply because they wanted to kill her. And she became a hero, an instant hero. So as a woman, as a Muslim woman in the Middle East, and you are looking at your option, death with humility, or death and then become a hero, what are you going to choose?
Sure. This final question, and I want to thank you. You have given oceans of information to an American people that desperately need to hear it from someone who has experienced it. This final question is, what can the average American do to protect our country?
Participate, act, become involved in activist organizations that are making a difference. For example, I founded AmericanCongressForTruth.org to empower millions of Americans to be mobilized, to network, to share information, to become educated, to learn what laws are on the floor so they can call their elected officials and participate. Sign up to receive our emails and action alerts at AmericanCongressForTruth.com. I send people 1 email a day, not a newsletter, 1 article, because I believe if the American public receives just 1 article a day, pays attention to 1 article a day to find out what's happening in our country, they will be a more informed voters comes election day. And I tell people, and we give tools on our website, here's your elected officials, call them, tell them this, voice your opinion. Unless you voice your opinion, nothing's going to change. And we tell people how to voice their opinion. For example, 1 phone call to an elected official equals 1,000 votes. That's how the elected official looks at it. So when the average American thinks, you know, what can I do? I'm only 1. Every phone call is a representative of 1,000 voters.
Yes.
If 40 to 50 people call the elected official about an issue, those 40 to 50 people are 40 to 50,000 votes on election day, and your elected representative will listen to what you have to say. AmericanCongressForTruth.com. That's the beginning for Americans to do something.
Bridgette, thank you for being with us. I want to encourage you to read her book, Because They Hate. You can get it in bookstores all over America. And I especially would like for those of you who are in civic leadership and spiritual leadership, those of you who are pastors, I encourage every pastor in America to read this book. Bridgette has written a book that is a must-read for every American pastor because it is something she has experienced.
Remember, the website for John Hagee Ministries is always www.jhchim.org.
Today's broadcast has been brought to you by the friends and partners of John Hagee Ministries. If you place an order today, add $5 shipping and handling in the U.S. and $7 in Canada. For orders or questions about the program, please call 1-800-807-9032. No portion of this program may be reproduced without the express written consent of John Hagee Ministries.
Thoughts produce actions, actions habits, and habits character. Christian character starts with Christian thoughts. And Southern Light is here to help focus your thoughts on Christ.
I'm Stacy of Front Royal. For the best in Southern gospel music and Christian program, keep listening to Southern Light.
For the sweetest music this side of heaven, keep your dial on WTRM 91.3 Winchester, Virginia.
USA Radio Network News. I'm Jack DeRay reporting.
Saddam Hussein's trial is a milestone in the Iraqi people's efforts to replace the rule of a tyrant with the rule of law. It's a major achievement for Iraq's young democracy and its constitutional government.
President Bush speaking at a brief news conference in Waco. The president saying it was indeed a measure of justice for many in Iraq.
Today, the victims of this regime have received a measure of the justice which many thought would never come. Saddam Hussein will have an automatic right to appeal his sentence. He will continue to